Hello, and welcome to our housing how-to on understanding your housing contract. As a disclaimer, we are going to highlight some of the pieces of the housing contract through this video, mostly those frequently asked questions, and we'll do so based on how they occur in the order on the contract. However, it is highly recommended that you make sure that you review the full contract prior to signing. Once signed, you are responsible for that contract. If you have any questions or need clarity on anything, please reach out to us at housing@uafs.edu. The first portion of the contract is the room contract period. This is where you will select which room period you would like. If you're going to live the Lions Den next year, you will select Lions Den Academic, which is from August to May. For Sebastian Commons, you have two options. You have the Sebastian Commons Academic or the Sebastian Commons Academic Plus. What's the difference? That Sebastian Commons Academic is for the academic year, so for 9 months from August to May. The Sebastian Commons Academic Plus is for 12 months. So it is for the fall, the spring, and for summer 2026. If you select the Academic Plus plan at Sebastian Commons, the way that we bill that is we put half of your summer for 2026 on your fall 2025 bill, the other half on your spring 2026 bill. And so your fall and spring bills are higher, but then you don't owe any money in the summer. We do this for people who want to use that financial aid to help cover the cost of their summer housing. If that is not an option for you, or you're just not sure, you can go ahead and select the academic plan for Sebastian Commons, which is from August to May. You will then have the option in March of 2026 to do a summer extension contract for that upcoming summer. So either way, you can still stay for 12 months. It kind of depends on how you want your bill to occur. So feel free to contact housing if you have specific questions regarding that. The next section of the contract is going to be your meal plan or your board selection. If you have been a resident this year, which you should be, if you are going through our contract renewal process, you have had a meal plan before. The meal plan looks a little different this year, not a ton, but a little bit. We do still have the unlimited meals per week plan. That plan is only going to have the $75 in dining dollars attached to it. And then we've gotten rid of our 220 block, and instead we're replacing that with a 12 meals per week plan. So what that means is if you select that plan, you would get to swipe 12 times per week in the appropriate locations for that. If you say only used 10 of those meals in that week, you would lose the other 2 meals. So keep that in mind as you determine kind of like what your eating habits look like. That 12 meals per week plan comes with $200 dining dollars. The other block plans are the same as far as the 160 block, 80 block, 40 block, and still dining dollars. However, prices have gone up slightly on each of those meal plans to account for the rising costs in food. If you want to see specific information about rates, please go to the UFS website to look at those. Also, when you're in your housing portal and looking at your contract, it does show rates there as well, but please note that those rates are going to have just the meal plan portion of the actual meal plan, and they do not include the dining dollars. So you kind of have to add the dining dollars to it to see the total cost. So there will be the breakdown. There is an image that also helps in there, but just visiting the website or letting us know if you have any questions is helpful. All right, covered parking. If you're living at Sebastian Commons next year, there is the option to select yes or no to wanting covered parking. Options are limited, and anyone who does select yes will be contacted later in April for more information about that process. After our selection process for covered parking is complete, we do open that up to anyone else at Sebastian Commons who may want to add covered parking to their contract at a later date. All right, terms and conditions section. First is general eligibility. So you must be enrolled in at least 12 credit hours in the fall and spring semesters in order to live on campus. If you're not going to be enrolled in at least 12 credit hours, then you do need special permission to live on campus. You can get that permission by emailing housing@ufs.edu and letting us know the circumstances behind your ask. We will review it from there and approve or deny that request. You must be enrolled in 1 credit hour in the summer. So if you're gonna live on campus in the summer, you do have to be enrolled in 1 credit hour. If that is kind of your first semester. If you are enrolled in classes, like the semester prior, you're welcome to stay through the summer. Or if you are going to be taking classes in the fall, so if you're taking summer and fall classes, you can stay in the summer without having to be enrolled in the summer, if that makes sense. Um, First year students may not live at Sebastian Commons. And to live at Sebastian Commons, you do have to have completed one of the following. You have to have completed at least 30 credit hours post high school. So after high school, so not concurrent credit, you have to have 30 hours completed. Or you have to have lived in the Lions Den for 2 semesters, or you will be 20 years of age by September 1st of that current year, so of 2025, the upcoming year. All right, the contract period. So you do have to select a contract period, which is what we discussed previously as far as the 9 month or 12 month options. Um, if you sign after that contract period begins, then their rates would be prorated. So let's say you do not renew your contract now, you come back later and decide that you would live in housing in September, those rates would be prorated so that you would be paying for the time that you actually move in. If you are ending your contract at the end of fall, you have to move out by December 12th, or if you're a graduate, it's by December 16th. So please just kind of make sure that you're paying attention to that. Contracts are for a full year. And so if you are moving out in December, you are welcome to appeal this decision, but you are going to be given that $1,000 contract buyout fee at that time. And you do have the opportunity to appeal that. If you're graduating, we don't charge you that. But if you're not graduating and you're still leaving at that point in time, you are assessed that fee unless you are able to appeal it with some documented information. And that goes through an appeals process. Early or late checkouts do have to be approved in addition and could incur additional fees. We do, if you do an early check-in, we are going to charge you per night. The Lions Den rate is $20 per night. Sebastian Commons is $25 per night, as well as if you request a late checkout. So if you are staying before or after your contract period begins or ends, there are additional fees for those additional nights that you would be staying. You do have the option to update your contract by 5 p.m. on November 15th in order to kind of update that. So let's say that you decide you're going to do the Sebastian Commons Academic Plus contract for 12 months. But on November 1st, you realize, oh, I'm not going to be here for the summer. You do have the option at that point in time to come to us and say, I want to switch that back to a 9 month contract. And we can make changes to your contract up through November 15th. After that, we are not able to make those changes when it comes to your contract period. You must move in by 5 p.m. on the first day of classes or your contract will be canceled automatically. You can also, if you know for some reason you're not able to be here by then, contact your resident director or housing and let us know and we will work with you on that. The Lions Den will be closed for winter break, but residents may request to stay at an additional rate. That additional rate basically is $20 per night, and it does cap out at $340. If a student is participating in commencement, they may receive special permission from housing to stay late. So if you're participating, let's say you are not graduating, but you are a part of the band or you're singing or you're working the event for some reason, you can contact housing to request a late stay and upon approval would not be charged that additional rate to be there through commencement. If you stay after commencement, any additional nights, then there would be an additional charge. And so you must check out and vacate your room by the end of your contract period, or there are additional charges to that. Room assignment. So UFS reserves the right to assign or reassign students for the purposes of consolidation or any other reason as determined by UFS. So we put people in rooms based on their room preferences and what is available. Sometimes we do have to reassign or consolidate. And sometimes that can happen more so in the summer. as we do maintenance projects, but it can happen, especially if there is a maintenance issue or something that makes your space not available to you any longer. Race, national origin, disability, religion, or any other basis prohibited by federal or state law shall not be considered in assignments. The assignment priority is at the discretion of UAFS. So what we do essentially is we do assignments based on application submission dates. And then anyone who is not getting their preferred location or roommates and so forth are put on a wait list. And then we go through those based on when those are put on there by those dates. And again, by those application submission dates. So that's kind of how we work through that to make it as fair as possible. Assignments are personal, non-transferable, and non-assignable. Requests to transfer rooms must be made in writing. So what that means basically is that you can't just go to another random person that in another room and then come to housing and say, hey, we're going to switch. Like you don't get the opportunity to make those changes. However, if both parties want to come forward and say, hey, we have a proposal, we'd like to do this, we're always happy to look at that. But you are not able to kind of authorize that. That has to be authorized through housing. We do take requests to transfer rooms. Once we do assignments, a lot of that comes in through emails. But we do have kind of room requests for people who want to move. And we typically, once school begins, we don't move people for the first 2 weeks. So that roommates can kind of get a feel for each other before we kind of work through those. However, as we're placing new people and so forth through summer, if there's a change that needs to be made, you can let us know and we'll work with you as much as we possibly can on that. Unauthorized room changes or failure to move out may result in additional charges, as we've kind of discussed. Sign up for rooms for the next academic year will occur in the spring semester, which is kind of what we're going through right now. So we will have our contract renewal period is until March 31st. Those who sign up by that date will get to select a room in the week of April 7th with more information coming about that. Students may not subcontract any living space, occupy a space to which they are not assigned, or allow unauthorized persons to occupy the assignment or premises. So basically, you cannot lease your apartment or your room or your suite out to anyone else and make money on it. You cannot do a subcontract for that. You also cannot occupy any guests into additional rooms or beds that you may have, as that's a violation of our policy. And it will result in conduct issues for you. Room assignments kind of continued. So requests for roommates have to be made in the student's application or a written request. We can't just take that verbally over the phone or anything. We do need that request in writing. So if it's not through the application via email is fine as well. Space will not be held for any requester's application fee, etc. has not been received on time. So essentially, whenever people apply for housing, as you probably know, you will go through and apply and pay the $75 application fee. As a current resident, you don't have to go through that process anymore. And so we will not hold a space for someone. So let's say that you, as a returning resident, want to room with someone who is going to be a new resident with us. We can't hold that space in your room for that person. We would just highly encourage that you have them apply as soon as possible if they haven't already done so. And when they do, to list you as their roommate. We do place people based on application submission date. And so the earlier they apply, the better. But we do fill up sometimes. And if that's the case, we need to make sure that those who did apply before them and who's gone through the process, fairly, are able to be placed prior to that person. So the biggest thing that you can do to kind of help out your friend or potential new roommate at this point would be to ask them to apply if they have not done so already. We do make every effort we can to meet roommate requests, but we can't guarantee those assignments. We will work the best that we can to kind of move folks around and ask people to move and so forth. But again, it's not a guarantee, but we do everything that we can to make that happen. Current residents wishing to switch rooms may fill out a room change request form. Forms will not be accepted the first 2 weeks of each semester. Again, we want our residents to have some time to get to know their roommates and kind of make sure that everything is a good fit or not a good fit before we go through and move people around. Not to mention the first couple of weeks, sometimes we're still seeing who didn't show up, and we may not have spots available for people to move into. So those first couple weeks, we don't do any room changes. For summer housing, all summer housing is at Sebastian Commons. And so if you are already living at Sebastian Commons and staying for summer housing, you may be reassigned a temporary apartment in order for Sebastian Commons construction to occur or maintenance projects to occur. But if that's the case, you would be notified with more information about that. UFS will attempt to notify students of roommate assignments prior to new roommates moving in. We do try to let people know whenever someone new is going to move in, but sometimes those situations do happen fairly quickly. And if that's the case, we do our best, but at the same time, you know, at the same time, we have to make sure people have a place to stay. You don't have the right to refuse a roommate unless you're willing to pay for all the empty beds in your room or your apartment. So just please keep that in mind. We do have some options for executive apartments, which are bigger spaces, or double as single or triple as double in the Lions Den. Traditionally, we've not had a lot of space for those, and so we don't initially assign those as we have in the past. But if you are assigned one of those types of apartments or suites, it's possible that if we need that space, that would be taken away, and you would have a roommate at that point in time. If a special accommodation is needed, students can notify housing 2 weeks prior to move-in. Circumstances must be on file with Student Stability Services, and room accommodations are kind of subject to change based on availability. So we do hold some specific rooms for ADA purposes. If you have a need of that nature, you need to start by contacting Student Disability Services at ada@uafs.edu and work with them through what your accommodation may be. If approved, they will send that accommodation letter to housing, and then housing will work with you on the best solution based on the accommodation needed. There's lots of different accommodations that do occur. That being said, one accommodation that occurs pretty frequently is going to be emotional support animals. Emotional support animals, they do have to go through an approval process, and they cannot live on campus until after they've been approved both by student disability services and housing. But other than that, housing does not allow pets other than small fish in a 10-gallon fish tank or less. Food service and cancellation policy. So all residents must purchase a meal plan. There are dining dollars that are on each of those meal plans, and those are non-refundable. You can use the dining dollars. They do typically roll over from semester to semester, from fall to spring anyway, and then they have to be used by spring. So if you have extra in the fall, you can use those in the spring, but your actual meal plan, like your swipes, does not roll over. So cancellation of a contract or withdrawal from UFS may result in a partial refund. Block plans may not be prorated. Meal plans are personal and non-transferable, so you have to have your ID to use those. You can't just use them for any person. The unlimited meal plan, specifically note, it's for you only. It's not for you and your friends. So you just get that one swipe for yourself per each of the different meal slots that are offered here at UFS. Students can adjust their spring meal plan prior to January 16th, 2026. Though we're okay with you adjusting your fall meal plan. Up until basically classes begin in August, and we'll send out more information about kind of the deadline for that. Typically, it's the end of the week prior, so that we can update billing and make sure that you have the appropriate meal plan whenever things start for you in the fall semester. If for some reason you are wanting to switch your meal plan and it's into the fall semester, what we recommend is that you just do not use that meal plan until we can work with you on getting that switched, because once it is used, it's very hard for us to go in and get that switched. We're only able to switch a meal plan after school has begun and classes have begun in that first week, and only if the dining dollars are equal or more than what you currently have. So there are some limitations with that. So for the spring semester, if you decide you want to change your meal plan for spring, maybe in the fall you have the 160 block and you realize, hey, that was too many meals, you want to move to the 80 block in the a spring semester. As long as you're eligible to do so, you can do that by January 16th. Um, I've kind of covered some of the other things already. If you're not enrolled by 5 p.m. on the first day of classes, meal plan will be canceled. Again, that kind of goes with the whole housing moving in situation. We'll work with you on that depending on kind of what your situation is. Unused meals at the end of each semester are not to be refunded, but $90 can roll over from fall to spring. Food service is closed there for Thanksgiving, winter, and spring breaks. And then there's a full meal plan usage may be found online. So all the details about that can be found online if you'd like to look into that more. Also, again, I would recommend looking at meal plan prices online. Charges and payments. Charges for rooms do vary. Pricing is final no later than June 15th, 2025. So what that means is that right now we have proposed rates for next year, which are slightly different from the current year. And those are available on the website. Um, and they do have to be voted on by the UA system. That typically does not happen until end of May, early June. And so we have those prices usually finalized no later than June 15th, but they are the anticipated rates for next year, which should be considered whenever looking at what you're willing to spend and what you want to spend for housing. A contract received before the beginning of each term will be billed to student account by the second day of classes. If after the student will be billed within 3 business days. So if you do your contract after school begins, basically, then we will get that done as quickly as we can. But we do have to, we want to make sure that you're not going to hit any payment deadlines or things and kind of get kicked out of your classes. So we kind of work with you as best we can on that. Payment must be made on time. Late payments will be assessed by UFS late payment fee. So that's just something to note. You need to make sure that you're paying your bills on time. There is a $200 security deposit that's due with submission of a signed contract. The deposit will be refunded. If you are a current resident, you likely already have that $200 deposit on your account. And that would be something that would just stay with you until you leave housing. So you would not owe that again if you already paid that. At the end of the contract period, students must comply with the administrative checkout process. So make sure that, when you are moving out, you are paying attention to those move out emails, to the messaging that happens about that. If you are not following those directions, there are some consequences to that. And we can go over more of that in a moment. Charges are assessed for damages or loss of UFS property. Charges will be placed on student account. So if you do have damages to your space upon move out or even throughout the year, if there's something that's reported, those would be assessed and put on your account. You could be assessed and charged for excessive use of utilities. We do have the cost of utilities budgeted into your semesterly rate. But for example, if you're always running the air conditioner on a really, really low temperature, throughout the year, then you may be using up more energy and your individual unit bill may be higher than others. If that occurs, we do give you a warning before we start charging you extra for that. But just know that that could occur if you are not utilizing that space appropriately and those utilities appropriately. We do have wired and wireless internet for all of our residents in both facilities, and that's included in our room rate. The contract termination by students. So cancellations must be received in writing. We do have a housing cancellation form that you can fill out, and that's the easiest way for you to cancel. If you fill out your contract now, you can terminate your contract with no penalty before June 1st at 5 p.m. After that date, we do start assessing a $200 fee. And so June 1 through July 1, essentially, you would have a $200 fee. And then July 1 until end of July would be a $400 fee. And then starting August 1, if you've not canceled your contract and you do cancel it after that, then it does go up to the full $1,000 cancellation fee. And that's because you're holding a spot for someone that we could easily be placing there, and we would potentially lose. So there is a fee associated with that. So if for some reason you change your mind, please make sure you let us know. Try to make those decisions early on. That way, you feel good about kind of what's happening there, and you're not assessed those additional fees. Requests to reduce and or waive a cancellation or a buyout fee must be made in writing with supported documentation to the housing office within 10 days. And so if you're canceled within 10 days, you can appeal the decision to have that fee added to your account. We do ask for documentation as to why you're planning to do that. There are life events that do occur. Things that typically would release you would be your graduating military service or some sort of documented medical condition. However, there are sometimes other other things that do occur, and so we do want to have that process available for life events that may have to release you from housing. Selecting online classes will not alter housing contract commitment. Withdrawal from UFS will result in automatic termination of contract. So if you do withdraw from UFS, then your contract is terminated and you would have to vacate the property. If you move to fully online classes and you have a housing contract, you still are committed to that contract and you're still in classes. It's just that you would be taking those classes online. So just moving to completely online classes would not remove you from your obligation to housing. You would still be living on campus. So keep that in mind if you are planning to take any sort of like just full load of online classes at some point and are thinking you may not want to live on campus. Contract termination by students. So students are required to remove their belongings from UFS property within 24 hours of their withdrawal or suspension. So if you are no longer going to be enrolled in classes, you do need to get out quickly. We do work with you on that, but you do have to get out on that. If you stay any additional time, you are charged extra for that. Refund of room and board fees will be prorated through the first half of each semester. $9 are non-refundable. So, if you do leave, we do prorate you. So you may have the contract buyout fee, but you would also be prorated and given back money. So, like, let's say you are here for the first 2 weeks of the fall semester, and then you have to leave. You would be charged that $1,000 contract buyout fee, but we would refund you the money for the fall semester housing, with the exception of the 2 weeks you did live on campus. So you would get that money back. And then also, if you paid your $200 housing deposit, you would get that back too, and that would be applied to your what you owe before all said and done. And then, if student stays past the spring move-out date in May, there will be charged a nightly rate, unless they're paying for summer housing. So just keep that in mind as well. And as mentioned, there's a $20 nightly rate for Lionsden and a $25 rate for Splashing Commons. Contract termination by UFS. UFS can terminate a contract, basically for any reason. Typically, this would happen for like conduct reasons, or something of that nature. The $1,000 contract buyout fee will be assessed for the above, with the exception of an emergency or casualty for which the student is not responsible. So essentially, like if we have to terminate your contract, you're still going to have to pay that $1,000 contract buyout fee. Um, and again, this is going to be because of some crazy thing that has occurred. So basically, it might be like you've been suspended, there's a conduct issue. And so if you have caused the reason why your contract is being terminated, then you would also have to pay that contract buyout fee. Again, you can appeal it, but that is just something of note. UFS reserves the right to modify or terminate a contract due to health or safety emergency or otherwise due to circumstances beyond the reasonable control of the university. And this is in section G3 if you want to look at it in your contract. UFS can may terminate a contract for convenience for any reason by giving students 30 days notice. If the student is not enrolled in spring classes by December 12th, 2025, and does not move out or notify the housing office until January of their intent to move out, student will be charged 2 weeks cost of spring housing in addition to the contract buyout fee. Costs may include both room and board fees. So just know that if you do not move out in December, and you have graduated or are not going to be enrolled in the spring semester, then you are assessed to at least 2 weeks of room and board fees for the month of January, when classes begin, as well as any time in between, because you have not followed instructions and you have taken up that space of, of where someone else could be living. Failure to vacate the room upon notice of termination of the contract by UFS or the expiration of the contract period will result in $1,000 fee with no with no option to appeal. So just make sure that, like if you're not leaving and you're supposed to, you don't have the option to appeal. Locks will be immediately changed and the student will be evicted, which may result in additional fees. Student waives statutory rights of ejectment. Responsibility for damages. So UFS shall not be responsible for loss, stolen, or damaged property, nor personal injury sustained on UFS premises, students should obtain renter's insurance to insure their property. So this is in section HA. So just the big thing here is that UFS is not responsible for your personal property. It's important to note that um, we recommend that you have renter's insurance or personal property insurance. That way, if, your personal property is damaged, it is covered through that. You can check with your, potentially your parents. Sometimes the homeowner's insurance will also cover, you as a student who's in college. So just kind of looking into that, and of course, making sure that you have, car insurance, for example, that would cover any damages to a vehicle as well, should there be any damages there, maybe that occur while being on campus. If a living space becomes uninhabitable due to a fire or other casualty, UFS will attempt to relocate the student to another residential space if available. So if for some reason your room is no longer usable, then we will find you some other place if we can. UFS shall not be liable for and this goes into kind of in the area, there's some more information, but essentially not any acts of God, government restrictions, wars, and so forth that are on beyond UFS's reasonable control. Abandonment of personal property. So sometimes we have students that leave um, and move out and they leave some of their property in the room. If you do that, um, we do consider that to be like an improper checkout as well as you've left property there. And so that property will be immediately removed and disposed of at the student's expense. UFS is not liable for any of the loss or damages to that abandoned property. So once you leave and you left it there, it's considered to be abandoned. Room condition and damages, student accepts premises and furnishings as is. At check-in, student must complete a room condition report to ensure they are not charged for existing defects. So our staff do room condition reports prior to you moving in. We ask that you do a room condition report when you move in, and then we do another room condition report when you move out. And based on these documents is how we determine if any damages and any fees should be assessed. So it's important that you complete these documents to let us know kind of how you feel about your space and can report anything that would be considered a defect or damages that may already exist. Student agrees the RCR, so the room condition report, and inspection shall serve as the basis for any damage charges assessed by UFS. Students will leave room, suite, or apartment in the same condition are received. Reasonable wear and tear are acceptable and will not make any alterations, additions, or improvements to the living space. So, again, you shouldn't be doing things like putting in your own shower head or adding a filter system to the kitchen sink and things of that nature. It as is. A student agrees that the furnishings provided by UFS will remain in the suite or apartment when student vacates in the same condition as when the student occupied the premises. Reasonable wear and tear are acceptable. So again, we want you to make sure that the furnishings are left in good shape. How you received them. Essentially, we also are not able to remove items. So just keep that in mind. You can bring some, small types of items to kind of like add to your storage or things like that, but we are not able to remove any of the items that are currently in the space. Those do have to stay there. A student agrees to where two or more students occupy the same room, suite, apartment, wing, floor, or building, and the responsibility for damage, loss, or other charges cannot be ascertained by UFS. The cost of the damage or loss of charges will be allocated and assessed equally to all occupants of the room, suite, apartment, wing, floor, or building. So this essentially means that if you're in a shared space and there's damages and you can't tell who did it, each of those residents in that space will share the cost of those damages. Right of entry, so UFS officials may enter a student's room to conduct a welfare check if there is a reason to believe student's health may be in question, to maintain health and safety standards, an emergency, to investigate situations where students' behavior appears to violate the law or UFS regulations, to check in or check out student, to inspect periodically to ensure safe sanitary conditions, to perform periodic pest control or perform necessary or routine maintenance work. UFS officials make a reasonable effort to notify student prior to entry. So this essentially means that we will notify you prior to entering your space. We do quarterly health and safety checks. We have Terminex come and spray often. If there's a maintenance request, we will let you know that maintenance has been notified. We typically always are going to let you know before someone enters your room. However, in the event of an emergency, we do have the right to still enter your room. For example, if your smoke alarm is going off and you are not present, we may need to enter your space to see if there is a fire, or where that smoke is coming from. So sometimes in the case of emergency, we may have to enter, but we will always make sure that you know that we did so. Health and safety, it's important to note that roommates should all complete roommate agreement regarding the cleaning and health and safety standards of their space. And that will be done with your resident assistant, your RA. I know we've gone through this super fast, and it's a lot of information, so I appreciate you hanging in there. If you have specific questions, please feel free to contact us at housing@uafs.edu. You can call us at 479-788-7340. And again, to access those contracts, you can go to tinyurl.com/UFS housing. Also, if you'd like to see a PDF copy of the contract and that's easier for you to read, please email us and we're happy to send you one of those. And then finally, if you have hung with me this long, first of all, I appreciate you. But you can email housing by March 31st with your name. And one thing that you learned from this video, all those entries will go into a drawing for one of three $50 Lions Cash awards that will take place for fall 2025. And if you have any questions, again, just let us know.